Well, this is David Nelson and Nick Rogers. I've known Nick actually for 20 years, and I'm going to ask these two guys, since you might not know them, to share briefly, just 1 minute, about your past, your life a little bit, and then we'll entertain these questions. Not sure we'll get through all of them, but these questions that you have text us. So, Nick.
Hi, I grew up in Las Vegas. I was the youngest of 6 kids. My father was in the military and then retired. He was a angry, physically abusive father, so all of us kids kind of grew up fearing him. I personally grew up rejecting him as a masculine role model. So when I began to get into the junior and high school ages, I began to still need that masculine affirmation. So that's when I began to identify as someone who is gay and began to reach out to other men my own age, and then later in college began to be very active in the lifestyle. I was a Christian. I had an experience in high school, so I did have a period of struggling both with God and my spiritual life and still having those desires. I moved to Lake Tahoe, where I kind of cleaned up my act and began to get into a deep relationship with God that began to heal my inside, my heart, where I was at with God and the things that had caused me to reach out to homosexuality.
Awesome, very good. I guess I've known you 25 years. Let's do the math on this here. Give Nick a hand, please. Glad you're here. David Nelson, would you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, I'm the only child, and I was born, I was adopted from birth. And around the age of, and my parents were believers, around the age of 6, my father really detached from me emotionally, and that scarred me a lot. As a young boy, I was extremely, I just needed to experience life. I've always been that way, very intense person, need to experience everything. And at that time, I needed to experience what it was like to be a man, and I didn't have that, and I continually looked for it. Eventually, long story short, started to, during the teenage years when the normal things are supposed to be starting, the attractions, there was this huge gap of like, well, who am I as a man? That really affected my sexual attraction. And it was a curiosity. It wasn't even something I necessarily wanted. It was just, I felt I needed to fulfill the knowing, the question that I had. So I delved into pornography, extremely heavy. That became an addiction. And thankfully, it was by the grace of God. I accepted Christ when I was 6 years old. And it was by his grace that he spared me from, I distinctly remember one time I had gone somewhere seeking out things that were not holy, were not godly. And I remember it was really a moment of, I was leaving, I didn't get what I wanted. I was thankful for that, but it was just the Lord showed me where I was. I was 19 years old, and he showed me where I was, and I decided at that moment that I was ready to take ownership of my faith and ownership of my struggle, and that's where.
Awesome. How old are you now?
28.
28, good. Give David a hand. Thank you, David, for sharing. If we had literally 10 people up here, they would each have variations of their experience. So these are 3 samples. Here are some questions. We're going to kind of go through a few of them. And again, these are your questions. Do you believe being gay is a choice or something you are born with? And so you can each take a fling at it.
I don't believe the homosexual desires are a choice. I think they're a result of experiences in childhood, often, relationship with, personally, my father, that led me in that direction. I have a sister who chose the same lifestyle. I have a brother, or another sister who actually chose drugs and alcohol instead. I think some of these life experiences lead you down to making a choice to replace hurts and brokenness. However, it was a choice what I wanted to do with it. The homosexual desires doesn't mean to act out. It just means there's something wrong inside. And
okay.
So,
very good.
The choice.
Please.
I don't believe it's a choice. However, I remember a talk I had with my mom maybe a year ago, and she said, David, even if it was, it's still not okay. And God still can change that. Like, even if you were born that way. And I think of I think I was just having a discussion with her about the subject, and we never ask, like, we never kind of caveat to, well, you know, the alcoholic, or it seems to always come back to this one area of sin, and I think it's because it's something that is so close to people, because it's a feeling, and it feels, and a lot of times I believe those seeds are planted at such an early age, usually by abuse, and people don't want to be hurt anymore. So, you know, we're kind of compelled to say, well, you're born that way, to excuse it, but the truth is that God has set us free.
Right.